Who were the players left off the Eagles' initial 53-man roster who have now been hung onto the practice squad that could potentially help this Philadelphia Eagles team, potentially in the near future, but definitely they're hoping with an eye towards the long-term future? All right, guys, let's talk about that. Who is the best player the Eagles cut? Ooh, ooh, that's a tough one, man. Best player, the best player they cut. Mm. I really like Andre Sam. I really think the kid Burks, the young man Burks that played for the 49ers, I think that he's not a starting caliber dude, but I do think that he's good enough to make 32 teams rosters. He's good enough. Obviously that's not always the way it works out because there are decisions, there are rookies, there are future considerations. But I do think Burks is a good player. I think he got cut, Burks got cut. I think Andre Sam's a good player. He's an undrafted free agent that I think really showed out. Andre Sam did. I think Toth would, I don't think Toth is anything to write home about, but any dude that can play five spots, any dude that's got his versatility to play along five different areas along your offensive line is valuable. So, I mean, Brett Toth, you could say, is a little surprising because I definitely thought he'd be the guy that kind of made it just because he can literally play anywhere. But yeah, I mean, there's a few guys in particular. I was like, ooh, Paris Campbell. I don't think Paris Campbell's terrible. I think he's a little injury prone. Yeah, I'm a little concerned if you had to rely on Paris Campbell, but we don't. I think we have, when you get Anaya Smith back, Paris Campbell, if he's going to stick around through the practice squad, whatever they do there. And then, of course, we have the trade we made for Dotson. Like, I think we can sustain an injury in terms of the slot. And that doesn't even include Britton Covey, who I think, ideally you don't want Britton Covey to be a heavy part of your offense because I just don't think he has the flexibility to play outside. But I do think the kid can create separation underneath. One other player that I think we kind of did a disservice to because I didn't mention him and I didn't talk about him, but I do think that we need to mention his importance to the Philadelphia Eagles is offensive lineman Nick Gates. So Nick Gates, you could say the same things about Brett Toth. What we said about Brett Toth could be said about Nick Gates, right? He's a guy that the Eagles view as being someone who could play all five alignments potentially, although I really think he's more suited to play as an interior O lineman, so left guard, center, right guard. I just think he lacks the adequate arm reach to play outside, kind of as a tackle. And I also think he's a little tight in the hips in terms of being able to get kicked out of his stance and create the separation you need to play that catch technique. The Eagles play, I'm a little iffy on him being able to do that. With that said, Nick Gates is a guy that they're already going to have ready for, call up come week one. This is a guy that they know that if something happens, he's a veteran dude that they can bring in, plug him in and play him and get, serviceable. If we lose one of our starters, you're not going to have the same level of play, but get serviceable play out of that young man. And I'll also just add in that I'm a pretty big E.J. Jenkins fan. I think E.J. Jenkins has something there to develop. I think he showed a little bit as a pass catcher. He's got the frame, 6'6", 260-pounder. Just needs to develop a little bit more as a pass blocker and a run blocker. I think that's why they're kind of hanging him on the practice squad, hoping they can develop that, because if you can get that part of his game down, I definitely think the young man has, a possibility by the end of the year into next year to kind of make a play, make a push for a roster spot. And why Jack Stoll was not a part of the, that decision for the 53-man cut down. He's one of the outside, if you want to call him that, kind of players that were brought in. And I do think that Jack Stoll's a guy that we all know at some point in time is going to get call-ups to the active roster or may even get hung to the active roster as time goes on. I mean, the Eagles really like Jack Stoll. I think that's a very obvious one to say. So, to me, these are the things that kind of stood out to me about who was cut, how the practice squad is shaped up. I do think it is noticeable that they kept 3 interior offensive linemen on the practice squad when they only went 9 deep on the active 53. So they have Nick Gates, Brett Toth, and Dylan McMahon. All 3 of those guys are interior O-linemen. And then they got one developmental tackle in Lakin. I don't know how to say his last name, guys. The big Aussie, who's a developmental guy that, looked fluid out there. I still think he's got a long ways to go before he's an NFL player, but he showed you some of that, raw athleticism out there when he got his chance to play. So, yeah, there's definitely some hope. There's definitely some dudes that stuck to our practice squad that, they're just names to an extent, guys. Don't get me wrong. They're just names, but at the same time, you could see the potential in some of these guys. You can see that some of these guys have an outside shot if you give them a chance that they can develop and actually become decent players in the league. So those are my thoughts, guys. I appreciate y'all. Don't forget, guys, Monday through Friday at 10 a.m., we're going for an hour time slot every single day. So I'll see y'all on Monday morning for the live stream.